1988, and I would like to have a conversation with you. I think it was the best year in the 80s for horror movies. You have Child's Play, The Blob, They Live, which is considered one of the best. Michael Myers came back. You have
Freddy was back. Jason was back.
Yep, like 4 or 5 in all of them. Even Bad Dreams is kind of...
Phantasm was back.
Phantasm,
like we had everything was coming back.
The Brain or whatever. But here is one that would probably be, if I categorized them and listen to rate them, would probably be stuck somewhere in the top 3.
Oh, I'm looking forward to seeing how it fits into our upcoming Patreon video. So
right, yeah.
Yeah, look for that coming soon. Join the Patreon now to do it, and join us today while we talk Pumpkinhead. Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Can I have it?
You want to take a look at it?
He's got a copy of it. Look at that thing. It's beautiful.
It's like one of those good Walmart purchases. Not anything else but movies.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. Heck yeah, we just mentioned we have a Patreon. Check that out for some great deals and some great content and an opportunity to tell us what movies we can review on the show in a future episode. And of course, we'll give a shout out to you if you want. Both Kyle and I are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that webpage for critics reviews as well as ours. And today we're talking about from 1988. Kind of a cult following. Came out in August, a little late for 88, and kind of just got its tracking a little bit in the 90s for success. We're going to talk about Pumpkinhead.
When a group of city kids head to the country for some mild-mannered fun, they cause the death of the son of Ed Harley, a local shopkeep. Ed, with the power of a dark witch, unleashes a vengeance demon to take his revenge, but he's unable to call it off.
This kid in this movie totally looks like the kid from Jerry Maguire.
Well, they make like the Coke bottle joke and stuff like that.
And then bully him, right? Like kids in the we got bullied by teenagers, right? Okay, so Pumpkinhead, as I said, came a little bit late in the game, but it came out, and I think nobody really talked about it. I know when I was 11 years old in '88, we only talked about was Phantasm coming back, Michael Myers is coming back, and all these sequels. And this kind of got lost in the shuffle, kind of because of the title. It sounds really ridiculous for the production you get.
Yeah.
And I think once you sit through and like, oh, this is the kind of movie that is actually, it's almost deceiving, the title, because it's not really a pumpkin head.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's better than the previous title.
What was
the original title for the film was Vengeance the Demon. Like, which is, I mean, it's not incorrect, but it's also not helpful.
But it's still kind of generic, too.
You know, because the film itself was based on a poem. It's one of the only films I know that's based on a poem by poet Ed Justin, who had written it. The poem was called Pumpkinhead, and that was where they finally decided to go back and do that, because at least it was interesting. At least it's a unique title. But yeah, you're right. Tonally, you're not sure how to feel about it.
Exactly. Right. It is directed by...
Yeah, we got Stan Winston.
Okay.
Did his first feature film here.
He
only did
the
two. He did, what is it, A Gnome Called Norm, which was after this. Yeah. That's a film I've not seen, but then he did this film first, and he actually wanted to leverage it because when he read the script originally, he was asked to do the makeup effects or the special effects for the film.
Which are, yeah.
And when he realized, like, this is a fairly small script, it's a fairly small story, this is something that I could, you know, take a bite out of and actually try to do something unique, try to do something different in the world of filmmaking, because I've never directed before. And I think, again, this is something that a lot of first-time directors really should think about, especially if you've worked in other parts of the film world. Yeah. Try a little bit of a smaller story for your first one. Simple. And expand as you can.
Smaller means simple. Not a lot of subplots, you understand, and not using your monster at the right amount of exposure.
Yeah. Okay. And so, like, those effects were going to be good no matter what you did. I mean, there was no getting around the effects were going to be brilliant inside the film because Stan Winston was working on it. Although he did kind of take, I don't want to say a backseat to the effects, but he had other things to work on. So he left it mostly to his team and kind of just yes and no to a lot of things. Yeah. And there was a number of different permutations of what the, you know, creature was going to look like because they just really, you know, initially there was an idea of making it actually look like a pumpkin-headed creature, and then it kind of
melted almost into something. And it really does look like a melted version of some kind of organic pumpkin.
Yeah, and I finally noticed it on this viewing that the film's Pumpkinhead creature is meant to actually, as it grows up and gets bigger, it's meant to actually evoke Lance Henriksen's features. A little bit. The front face.
Just a little bit, right.
As it begins to swallow up Ed's soul.
So, yeah, we're talking about stars Lance Henriksen. My God, I think he did 2 movies a year in the 80s. Especially this is kind of his peak time where you see a lot of him in movies after Aliens. Once after Aliens and that success of that, he was prominent in a lot of movies. My God, look him up in the filmography. He's made over he's been in 200 movies.
Yeah, and a lot of the times he's not the main guy. We were in a specific peak where he was like in the main cast more.
Absolutely
things like Near Dark, things like Aliens, where like he was, maybe not the first name, but he was definitely part of the main cast. He was a noticeable feature in the film.
Yeah.
He kind of had that jumping off point working with James Cameron and the Terminator, where he's actually a fairly small role in that film and really gets to expound and go further on his next few roles.
Yeah,
nowadays,
good springboard.
He does a lot of smaller films nowadays. He does a lot of smaller characters. I think the last time I feel like I saw him in a movie was this film called Mom and Dad with Nicolas Cage about parents who go psychotic and try to kill their kids. He plays Nicolas Cage's dad, who comes to visit and then goes crazy and tries to kill him.
Usually, he's like you referencing that movie. Usually, he comes in and just gives a lot of exposition dump, like you children should not come in there.
He's one of those guys that can do it though.
I know.
He can come in and he's kind of like Morgan Freeman. That voice, I would listen to him. Read stereo instructions.
Also, after this, this is in between. I think 88. This is not in between. After Near Dark, which kind of really put him out there.
Yeah. And of course, he actually designed Ed's look. So if you look at the film and you see how he is, I think he wore prosthetic teeth. I think he actually kind of wanted to accentuate some of his features, look a little bit more like he was a person who didn't have the means to do a lot of things. He took on that part of it right there because initially he didn't really have a lot of care to be in this film.
Yeah.
He was pretty nervous. He'd worked with Stan Winston on a couple of films, of course, before, but it was not a thing where he knew. He thought the title was corny. He thought the idea was corny.
It is, yeah.
And he actually only took on the role because he was flipping through the script, kind of just meandering about, looking at it, and he came across the iconic scene of Ed's son rising up in the truck and saying, "What have you done, Dad?" And he was so caught off by that imagery that he wanted to take the role. And I think it's probably the strongest scene in the entire movie from a character perspective. So
yeah, it all circles back from the bookend. It's
Yeah.
almost a bookend kind of a story. I want to bring out cinematography and makeup artist before we
Yes,
move on.
cinematography is Bohan Bazeli. I think I'm saying that right. I don't know. But
Please correct us for God's sake.
He's done so many movies, more notably recently with things like he did the Lone Ranger film that had
but texture-wise,
those
that
films.
yeah.
But those films look gorgeous. We're working with Gore
I like to
Verbinski.
say the texture of that.
He also did the Ring remake from 2002, which has a very distinct. What I like about him is that again he really does mold his work to the filmmaker.
Right.
You can tell this is a Stan Winston film because he's
just
really
by the
able to
gels
capture
that are
it
in the
really
camera.
well.
Right, the gels,
Yeah.
it's really orangey. It's really bluey.
Yeah, it's kind of pumpkin landscape.
Yeah. And then if you haven't already know, it's edited by.
Marcus Monton, I believe, who did things like, he hasn't done a lot of big stuff, but things like American Ninja. He did a couple of the Wishmaster direct-to-video sequels, not a lot of notable things. Although I will say that the problems with both of those films that I can remember was that the editing was not something I was extremely fond of in those Wishmaster sequels. So, what does he have to bring here?
Editing, well, Wishmaster, that's a lot of it's a lot of stuff that hard to formulate because you get what the director sends you, right? Mm-hmm. And it was with
I'm not gonna give him too much crap to him for that because those films probably weren't well made either.
So like I said, it came in late in the game. I don't think anybody talked about it in '88. I'm sure in my circle of close-knit friends, it wasn't even really mentioned. And you don't even remember. I don't even remember seeing it in the video store. And I think it just got a lot of the legs just slowly building up. A lot of talk about. No, give it a chance. I know this title sounds ridiculous, but give it a chance. Yeah.
My local Kmart. Yeah, that's right. I'm from the time when we had Kmarts.
Kmart?
My local Kmart used to have this front end during the Halloween time where they would be the one end cap of just all VHS DVDs of horror films. Yeah. And I picked that thing clean every year. And I know that Pumpkinhead wasn't in my town because it wasn't on that because I didn't watch it until years later. I never saw this as a kid. But it had that legend to it. I used to read the horror books and stuff and I saw pictures of Pumpkinhead with Stan Winston. But I do have a theory as to why the film didn't do well. There's probably other reasons, but I have a theory about it. The De Laurentiis Corporation was the one that was starting on work on the film.
Yeah.
They, of course, were heading through bankruptcy. And so it ended up getting jostled and picked up by United Artists as well. So the film kind of didn't really have a specific
big wide
release,
opening, right?
I think because the company that started working on it didn't have any money to market it. And then United Artists picked it up, and that almost turns into kind of we'll pick it up and just make that money back at the very least.
Yeah. And also, you're competing with a lot of what was heavily advertised at the time. I remember seeing the Blob advertised on TV. I remember advertised for like new Freddy and Jason movies, and the big campaign of Michael Myers coming back. That was a month-long campaign of Michael Myers come back. They want you to get in the theater to see part 4, and also the Ball was back. I just remember the Ball was back. I'm like, what is this Phantasm? So you were competing in a heavily marketed area in '88, which it's saturated. We got bombarded with a lot of horror movies. In fact, you even had, I remember the campaign for Bad Dreams, which came out in spring, and that was labeled like just a ripoff of Nightmare on Elm Street. So you have all this jumbling, and then you slip in this with a title, it's going to be kind of off everybody's radar.
Yeah, when I was looking at just the films I've seen, because we were working on this top 10 or this top thing for 1988 for a while now.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at the films I've seen 70 movies from 1988. 50 of them are horror films, that's pretty on par, I guess, for me.
Yeah.
But
it was great,
in general, most of the films I've seen from that year are horror films, and it just smacked down with all of it. It's almost like getting to the end of the toothpaste tube of horror for the 80s. We're just squeezing out the last little bit there.
You gotta roll it. All right. Perfect opportunity to talk about a review. So right now, up next is our review of Pumpkinhead.
I have never felt like Pumpkinhead is one of my top tier.
Okay.
And the crazy thing about it is there's so much I love about the movie.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I think really going into it is like the biggest fault that I have, and I want to get the biggest fault out of the way, is what I mentioned earlier, is the editing. I feel like this is a film that has an 82 minutes before credits runtime, and I feel like it's got about 60 minutes of story. I feel like this is a little too long for even 82 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love the framing, pacing of the editing. I think they have beginning wonderfully how you crop in and time it everything. But right we get to the monster, you want it to speed up a little bit.
Yep.
I think you have the right amount of cut exposure to the monster. I think the music intro, the rattlesnaking kind of noise, wonderfully mixed in there. Because editing is not just so much cutting, but also you have to put in the music and everything. But peppered in the right amount of time of you have this monster.
Yep.
Yes.
I think that
Cut
late
down
second
the time,
act.
and you have a very killer movie.
Yep.
I don't think that's his fault. I think a lot of people want to present it like we gotta put this feature.
And a lot of people say you got to hit that 90-minute mark and such. And I mean, we talked about this recently with a couple other films where it's like they kind of ooze that credit mark by just adding in longer, slower credits. Do that if you have to, because make the actual meat and filler of the film really, really expounding. And but part of it might be those kids. I find those kids really easily hateable. And
that's
so
what you're supposed to do.
You are supposed to hate them, but at the same time, when it becomes a thing where they're being hunted down, it's a little wash, rinse, and repeat because I just kind of get rid of them, move on through them, mow them down, and then when we start to realize Ed's character turn, that's when I start to get back in. That's when you draw me back in again. So it's just that part of like that late second act that really frustrates me. But the things in the film are good.
Okay. Opposite, my point of view, I love it. Interesting. I do like the editing of it. You want to cut minutes and we can talk about but I just like how they individually peppered in. You have the right amount of monster. You maybe have a full, 5-second shot of the full feature up. But every time you see him, it's up composure. I do like the framing composition of it. I do like the framing of it. The makeup artist is wonderful. It looks cheesy, but it looks for the film. It's believable for the content of the film. Divorce itself from the movie looks ridiculous. But in part of it, it's kind of like that in the movie, like, that works. I do like it's got its own little signature sound effect.
I think the creature design is phenomenal, and I think, and that's why I'm going to give credit, though, to the cinematography. I think the way in which this film is shot is it has to be part of it from Stan Winston knowing how to shoot his work, but then also being able to work with a cinematographer who can mold to Stan's choices. Every time we see Pumpkinhead on screen, it's the right shot for him.
Yes.
It's perfectly shot for how this creature's supposed to look. I never once question that it's a real thing. Does that make sense? It's never an effect. It looks better than most CGI things today. Probably all CGI things today. This movie looks infinitely better. It feels real.
And I love the story of the dad and the boy. And the reasons for it.
Yep.
Because it's almost like every horror movie, everybody tells you don't do it, and Lance is too much in grief that he's going to do it anyways. To the point where even his own son, why did you do it?
Yep. And you can't put the genie back in the bottle in a lot of ways. I like that Pumpkinhead isn't a traditional like I was so worried before I saw the film that it would be a slasher film. That like a monster as a slasher, like someone would just stumble upon him and he starts massacring.
Well, yeah. When I was a kid, I was wondering if this going to be like Ghouls, where there's a lot of kids, and it's not really.
Yeah,
almost,
or like just a different kind of Bigfoot. You know, it could have gone that way so easily. I love the story of the tragic vengeance, and then again, not being able to call back the demon, not being able to fix it the way you want to. That works really well. Because the later on Pumpkinhead films, there's 4 of them. The 2, 3, and 4 kind of lose a lot of that tragedy, a lot of that real good thickness to them, and they even try to bring back Lance Henriksen in a couple of them, and it just doesn't work as well because you're losing the heart of what made this film.
It was the aesthetic. I love it. It feels like you're swallowing the dirt throughout the whole movie.
Yeah,
I love the landscaping. A lot of people say don't put the weather in your story when you write the script. This one has the weather in it.
Well, it's kind of like a perma-weather. Like it never really changes. It's just kind of deepening and getting worse as the film goes on.
Yeah.
I like. Yeah, we'd mentioned the music. I want to call that out again because I think the music is wonderful. It's got this Western twang to it. It's not strictly speaking a horror score, but more just a mood score.
But where the hell are we? We're in Nevada. We're in the northern Louisiana. I love that we don't know exactly where.
Yeah. But I think, that score just tends to evoke that kind of a feeling of tragedy, that kind of feeling of the horror. And again, it's so unique because it's done by Richard Stone, who outside of like a previously mentioned film, we talked about Sundown, the Vampire in Retreat, about this town filled with vampires. Which was also a Western. He did those kinds of films, but then he mostly did like Looney Tunes and Animaniacs stuff. So it's like he wasn't even really meant for this kind of world, but he pulls off the score so well.
Yeah, it's a great short film in the intro. It's kind of like their overture, that little intro of the old times, and how you kind of treat how this is going. It's like a folklore. It's almost like the Sleepy Hollow. Pumpkinhead kind of moves like Alien from the movie Alien. You don't know.
Yeah, I can see the criticisms I've seen from some people that the creature is a little too similar to a xenomorph. I get that. I do.
But what the hell? You got to live from the best, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's... The thing is, I don't think it's close enough to the xenomorph to be upset about it.
No.
I think it's similar. There are aspects of it, but that's also to say like that one person's work always has certain hallmarks. I mean, Sam Winston's work does have hallmarks to it. Those creatures are going to look a little similar, but they're drastically different in their execution.
But throughout the whole movie, the core of it is you feel the hate, the pain that the dad does.
Yeah.
And you understand. And then the pain of the kids, knowing that they made a mistake, that they're going to be paid for it. I know you're supposed to savor the killings of the kids. But right, you could clean them up, especially when the monster takes them.
Yeah.
And that's it. You don't need to know anymore.
Yeah, there's certain elements of that. I think, like, for example, I think John Diaquino, who plays Joel, the actual, like, main asshole, he, as much as I have a problem with the way the character is just in general characterized by the screenplay, I just don't find him believably asshole-ish. He plays it exactly how the script is asking him to play it. He is unbelievably
If you want to play
dirtbaggy.
vegetables, I'm gone, man.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, he is exactly what he's being expected to be. I think he understood the assignment. The character that plays his brother, I liked that characterization. I wanted a little bit more of that. He's the one who's basically...
He's the mediator between...
He's been the cleanup guy for his brother's douchebaggery.
Which I always say it's like the conscientious character almost in the story, the referee almost.
Yeah.
And he feels like that. Yeah.
Part of me thinks that those teenagers would have been better served if Joel had committed this crime without their knowledge and then went back and they went back to their normal weekend and then the creature shows up. Because I feel like this franticness of them hanging out in the cabin it just kind of didn't really, none of stuff moved around for me. Like the characters didn't move.
Well, I think that was intentional.
They were kind of there.
Right.
I'm sure that was a smaller choice to make, again, kind of.
Yeah, and I think it was intentional to make it claustrophobic, make it environment that he's coming in almost from the woods.
Yeah.
Almost like he's permeating everywhere. And that's prevalent in a lot of the 88s. I think it's just a part of the times. There's definitely a lot of 80s stuff to this movie.
Yeah.
The dangers of, kids just, we weren't watched. This kid go out there, Dadly goes away. Yeah, the teenagers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of and you get
bullied. But you can see why he was let out that way, because it's a small town. There's like 6 people there.
Yeah, and then he gets bullied right in front of everybody, right, with his glasses. But yeah, it's very much 88. There's a lot of things to take away. I think it's shot very well. Overall, I think editing is dang near clean up the little bit mistakes of Ed cleaning up. Fits. I like the writing of it. I think you need some overarching villain. The Pumpkinhead is not the villain. It's the boy, the kid who hit him.
Yeah, it's ironic that there's so much evil in the film, and yet it's tantamount to like a dumbass who's been drinking, and I guess drinking and driving is the ultimate evil. There we go. We have ourselves a villain.
Yeah, but it is a play on, when you write things, who is the real monster to it? Is this Lance Henriksen's the monster because he's the catalyst? Is it the, his son dying? And you feel the entire grief for it. It's a sad story.
Yeah.
That doesn't have a happy ending to it, like many other things we had in the 80s to it. That we like to see the monster get the guy who deserves it.
Yeah.
And we do.
We get that fundamental change in the characters. And I will agree to disagree on the editing. We get the fundamental change in the characters where they come out unclean on the other side. They've been through a situation together. And I think Lance Henriksen's character arc is the reason to watch the film. Even if there wasn't a practical monster, if there wasn't a monster in this film, his performance does kind of carry that thing throughout. It's the reason why he's the best part. And like I said, he cameos in Pumpkinhead 3 and 4. He is the best part of those two sequels. And he's only in them for 2 minutes. So... Yeah. It's all about Lance Henriksen's ability. I'm so happy he found the page that convinced him to be in this film, because in lesser hands, I don't think that character arc could work.
And there's some scenes that's very obviously in studio shot that look marvelous.
Yep.
I don't think that some of the, like, they're going to houses. Obviously, the gas station thing is on location, but there's great scenes of him going to like the old lady in the woods. That's shot in studio. The design and all the stuff that takes time to make that, wonderfully. I love the whole flavor of it.
Because you buy into it. And I think, again, that's a big win for the way the film is shot. I don't even... I'm surprised I've never heard of this cinematographer until I was looking up facts about the film, because he's done some great work across the entire career and is consistently great. And yet we don't talk about him as being able to kind of mold his skills as well.
Yeah. All right. What do you think of our reviews of Pumpkinhead? I really do enjoy it. I think for me it's one of the top 3, 4 of 88.
It's definitely my favorite Pumpkinhead movie. Although I'm sorry to say it's not saying a lot. That franchise is terrible after this film.
I've never seen it.
But I enjoy the film. I've actually grown to like the film quite a bit, but not enough to put it like super high. And like I said, I got 50 plus horror films that I've seen from 1988. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think this one's going to make my high ranking.
Good.
But you'll be able to find that out by joining the Patreon down below, so you can check out that video when it launches later on this month.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining us. Let us know your thoughts on the film down below, and you can find all of my film reviews, including a couple of Pumpkinhead film reviews, over at goatfilmreviews.com.
This will be in my horror film class if I had a horror film class. So, you can find my show, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts.